Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles and Foreign Minister Penny Wong will head to the US for the annual AUSMIN talks this week before heading to Tokyo for talks with counterparts there. Joining us now live is political analyst at Curtin University, Professor Joe Siracusa. Professor, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with AUSMIN. What will be high on the agenda for talks between Australia and the US?
Good morning, Danica. Well, what's on the agenda is where the next war is coming from. I mean, there's all kinds of war talk about China making a move on Taiwan and what role Australia would play as the United States ally in these matters. So that's very, very important. The other thing that Australia has to think about is what the United States wants to do, if anything, in the South China Sea as it resists Chinese hegemony in the area. China is making claim to the mineral wealth there, the fisheries, and all the rest of it. Over 500 million people are within 100 miles of the South China Sea, so that's going to be important too. And of course, there's the usual things. We're going to get a ceasefire in Ukraine, probably. What role would Australia play? Probably a large role. And of course, these meetings. I think this is the 32nd one. It's all that's left of the ANZUS Treaty. New Zealand got pushed aside when it decided it didn't want nuclear-powered American ships or American weapons in their ports. So it's important, and a nation of Australia's size is always going to be far more interested in America than America will be in Australia. So this is a chance to bring the Australian case to the table and to find out what Australia can do. And keep in mind, though I suppose most of your viewers understand this, is that the Australian Defence Forces right now are totally interoperable with the American forces. In fact, in some areas, interchangeable. So, when the Chinese threaten the United States and Australia, or threaten the United States, they threaten Australia automatically because they assume that the United States and Australia are hand in hand as they resist the Chinese pressure in the area. So that's absolutely true.
Now, an interesting one that we've been covering this morning is this trip by a bipartisan group of Australian MPs. They're set to arrive in Taiwan this morning. Now, you previously said that this trip is unhelpful. How do you think that China is likely to respond? Could it provoke Beijing?
Well, for those people in China at the highest levels who've been trying to pick a fight with Australia for the last couple of years, this feeds right into the narrative. They're saying that Australia is sticking their nose where it doesn't belong. It's running alongside the United States here when it should be minding its own business. For critics of Australia, this plays right in. For a number of other people in Beijing, and these are the level-headed, the moderate ones, they could just simply ignore the trip. Now, we got six parliamentarians showing up in Taiwan at a time that's not really crucial. It's not necessary. So I said, I think on your show on Saturday, I thought it was not a very useful trip, and it's certainly it's pointless in many areas. And if I was going to send a peace delegation to Taiwan, I doubt if I'd be sending Barnaby Joyce as the head of the peace delegation. He's a pretty feisty guy. So anyway, for those critics in China who want to beat up Australia, this plays right into their narrative. For those who are smart enough to ignore it and just let it happen without making much of a fuss, that's probably the better thing here. But at a time that Australia is trying to reset with China, and that is, there are a lot of important issues at stake here, and not to mention, climate change and security and all these kinds of arrangements. I mean, I'm not sure if this is a good waste of a good use of time, and it might be a waste of effort, and it certainly is going to have it's not going to redound to Australia's benefits. I mean, as I like to say, if Australians showed up in Puerto Rico and started fanning the Puerto Rican independence movement, which can get very violent, there'd be a lot of unhappy people in Washington. And so it's quite clear we're not going to war over Taiwan. Nobody's going to war over Taiwan. But Danica, I will tell you this, given the 2022 the Pentagon China military paper, we may be going to war with China over the South China Sea and freedom of navigation in 2023, because that's where the hot spot is, and that is where the United States has drawn the line in the sand, so to speak.
Well, it remains to be seen. Well, we'll see if it is a waste of effort, as you say. Joe Siracusa, we need to leave it there. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Okay, thank you.